Okay. Yes, I'm doing another one. They keep coming. I'm actually getting more subscribers. It's surprising. But whatever. I'm not gonna address that too much. So I'm feeling a little ill. Pardon my coughing and sniffling. Just recovering from a cold. I think in another couple of days I'll feel better. I'm still gonna go to work tomorrow because I'm an idiot. But anyway, this video is about the total lack of ethics in the Manosphere. Now, I've done a little bit of reading up in the Manosphere. I've read web pages such as The Rational Male and Chateau Artiste. I think I've read the most on The Rational Male, but I've read some other ones, some of these pickup artist sites. I mean, I don't really... I haven't read a lot about it, but I've browsed. I think I spent the most time on The Rational Male because I think it's kind of interesting, and I do think that they understand certain things about how women feel about guys. Basically, it seems like a lot of these guys that write these websites are interested in, guys. A lot of them are guys who aren't naturally alpha males who want to make themselves more attractive, and so they study the behavior of alpha males, and they study women's reaction. Basically, they're interested in what gets women sexually excited. And I would have to say that sometimes they're way off base, I'd say, but most of the time I'd say they're somewhat accurate. Women don't go for... It sort of ends up being a sort of only the strong survive kind of ethos in the long run. Kind of a, to the victor go the spoils, very Nietzschean, very, social Darwinian. And it makes sense on some level, I concern myself with collectivism more than individualism. And women are not all women. This is one of those things where I have to qualify, but oftentimes the most beautiful women are not particularly, at least in this country, I don't know about, it's probably different in other parts of the world, but in America, women are brainwashed to be individualists just like everybody else is brainwashed to be individualists. Men and women alike are brainwashed to be individualists. And women don't find attractive those men, at least in America anyway. Probably in a lot of other places, but mostly in America. Women don't find men who think in a more feminine kind of way, or a more collectivist kind of way. Women are generally more concerned with collective well-being than men are. Men have a biological imperative to be the alpha male, to have, to propagate our genes by sleeping with as many women, or as many attractive women as we can. Basically, most of the men on these websites are only interested in how do I get women to be more interested in me, or how do I get women to it's a very selfish kind of focus. The Manosphere. It's about how can I maximize my alpha status, or not behave like a beta, or not behave like a lesser male. And to some extent, it's not necessarily all that. Sometimes it's just people talking about. It's just them talking about, what women like, rather than giving you advice on how to be alpha. Maybe it's kind of an explanation as to why alpha males are so successful. And I can tell you from personal experience, I have not had much success in being more of a collectivist. Women are not as attracted by somebody who is a prominent social activist, or at least in this country. They're not going to be as impressed by someone who's I guess if you're a leader in any position, I guess they'll be somewhat impressed, but basically, who gets trophy wives? Rich businessmen. Men who, are captains of industry. You don't see a lot of hippy dippy types with gorgeous girlfriends on their arm. I mean, it's not that it doesn't exist. Of course, there are some. But those guys may have, those activists who have beautiful girls on their arm, might have alpha male qualities that are aside from their more feminine, caring, nurturing, collectivist mindset. They're very attractive. They may be physically gifted. They may think like, there are alpha male activists too. That's not to say that, there aren't. But, so basically the point of this is a couple of things. First of all, it's that, I think that's my big issue with a lot of women. And it's not all women. But generally, women flock to guys who are powerful. And being on the side of collectivism and on being on the side of preventing industry from taking over rather than being a part of industry is not as good for having women be attracted to you, because women like guys with power. You're not powerful if you're fighting the power. You see what I'm saying? The power is the captains of industry. The power is the people that will rape the land for profit. That's their goal. There's some power in being an activist as long as you can be a successful activist. But in the long run, being an activist does feel like a losing battle because, all we have is our bodies, and they have tons of resources at their disposal that they've accrued through their evil doings. So, my first problem, I guess the first thing I wanted to say is that, women would do the world a service if they found collectivists more attractive, or people who were fighting industry rather than people who were captains of industry. But that's another point. And there are probably a lot of women in other countries that do appreciate that. There are women revolutionaries who do appreciate people who are fighting against, the destruction of the planet for profit. But the Manosphere is not concerned with collectivism at all. And that's one of my issues with the Manosphere. It's all becomes a very selfish type of thing. These guys are bitter because women don't like them, or beautiful women don't like them, or want to make them husbands instead of just someone to sleep with, which I understand. You don't get to enjoy sex as much if you're married, because women, have achieved their goal of having a family unit. There's no need, once you've had children, there's no need to have sex anymore for a woman. Unless it's, because, obviously women still want to have sex as occasionally, but it's, it's not the same. You're not going to have the same kind of sex in a married couple as you will if you're just dating, or, a girl's trying to, ensnare you, or whatever you want to call it. So basically, what ends up happening is these guys in the Manosphere just kind of throw out the idea of doing anything for moral or ethical concerns. They act as if religion is entirely created in order to, fulfill feminist ideals rather than masculine ideals. And, that's what marriage is about, not having men sleep around. But, what the Manosphere forgets is that a lot of these ethical things are created because they're good for humanity as a whole. They may not be good for you individually, but they are good for the majority of people. Marriage was created so that the children would be protected. And men hurt women by sleeping with them and moving on, being a player type. Maybe it's not the worst kind of hurt. I'm sure a lot of them get over it and even still have feelings sometimes for the men who use them and abuse them, but it's just sort of like the lack of ethics in the Manosphere is ridiculous. They treat women like they have no value whatsoever. They only consider what will lead to potential sexual gratification for themselves, rather than what's good for everyone. Their consideration is anything that's good for my biological reproduction, or it's good for not even necessarily reproduction, but for my own ability to get laid, basically, is the only thing that matters. And collectivism and anything that was created for the good of a more collectivist approach is something created by women that's not necessary. And that is just, I think, disgusting way to think. It's an animal way to think. Basically, these men all just want to be the alpha male. And, genetically, we are programmed to want that. But it's also, I think, our job as humans, the only species on this planet, to move beyond that kind of thinking. And, in the end, maybe your life won't be as exciting. You won't be sleeping with beautiful women. You won't be, hoarding resources for yourself, living in mansions. You won't necessarily be the boss of people, telling people what to do, You sacrifice something of... there is a sacrifice there. You're sacrificing for the greater good. In order to live an ethical life, you have to sacrifice for the greater good, and the Manosphere is not interested in that whatsoever. So this is just a warning to those people who are big subscribers to the Manosphere and pick-up artist sites. Don't lose your ethics and your morality in the search to get laid, because I can say from personal experience, it's not great to be to lack the opportunity to be the alpha male. But on another level, I feel like you still have opportunities. It's not like you have no opportunities. There is a balance. Don't go totally over the dark side. Recognize that you can be a collectivist and still find interesting, attractive women to be with, as long as you don't act like a complete asshole. And maybe being an asshole might work a lot of the time, but I also find a lot of these websites, people who have ended up sleeping with tons of women end up getting to a point where they're burnt out and they feel like it wasn't really worth it. And I think in the long run, as men, even if you do sleep with tons of women, there's something you'll lack some amount of fulfillment. And at a certain point, I think you will want to have something a little more meaningful than just one night stands. And yeah, that can only be done if you take a less selfish approach.